Yeah.
All right, let's get going.
Let's
All
do
right,
it.
let's do some intros. Let's figure out why in the world the three of us are qualified to have this conversation. So Daryl, let's start with you. You want to do a little intro and why in the world we are qualified to have this conversation here today about cold calling?
Not a problem. So I'm Daryl Prale. I'm the CMO with VanillaSoft. I like to say the world's most kick-ass sales engagement platform, but hey, it's a sales engagement platform.
Mhm.
And we do over 15 million transactions every single month, of which a large percentage of that are just calls, hammering. So we know the stats, we know the numbers, we see the activity. I can give you all the data points from that. Beyond that, I just know what works when I talk to people like John and people like James and everybody else, what works, what doesn't. I'm lucky enough to travel the world, have a podcast, do the webinars, do the shows, and get real life feedback from you. So I also know what doesn't work. I hear it non-freaking stop. So we're going to hit it up today.
Love it. James, how about yourself? You want to give a little background and why you are qualified to have this conversation, my friend?
Yeah. So James Bodden, director here at Outbound View. And look, I've been in sales for about 12 years now, spent the last 6 years in inside sales. And really that's everything from being a full cycle inside sales rep, making 100 calls a day, to used auto dealerships, to being a physician recruiter, making 100 calls a day, to gastroenterologists, to being a BDR, making tons of calls to all sorts of people. And now for the last year or so, I've worked in, the outsourced sales development world. So being able to work with companies across industries and get on the phone for them and make cold calls for them and see what works on a day-to-day basis. So this is kind of what I do on a day in and day out basis, is the world of cold calling. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Love it. Yeah, thanks for coming. And myself, for those of you who don't know, John Barrows, CEO of J Barrows Sales. I am not qualified to have this conversation about. No, I'm kidding. I started my career doing tons of cold calls, like 400 dials a week. Knew my conversion ratios like the back of my hand. As I've graduated, I now coach cold calling and email techniques. I am not hammering the phones 50 dials a day anymore like I used to be, but I still make calls. I still, first of all, to make sure that stuff I'm still training works, but also because it is, I find, a piece of the puzzle these days. So with that, let's do a brief thank you to our sponsors. And I really did want to say thank you, because this is what allows us to do these things for free. So I wanted to thank SalesLoft, VanillaSoft, obviously. Daryl, thank you very much for your partnership and sponsorship. I appreciate it. Lead IQ, Gong, and Hippo Video. These are all fantastic vendors. And by the way, just to let you all know, the reason that we partner with vendors, the first thing we look for is ethos. You have to be a good people, and you have to do sales right, in our opinion, for us to partner with you. I don't care how much money you want to throw at us. So that starts the conversation. And then it's our ecosystem. So thank you to all those partners. Check them all out. They are all fantastic. And let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. Let's not start beating around the bush here. Let's get into it. And I wanted to start, for both of you, a question here that I've been struggling with, because I don't know about you guys. I got plenty of trolls online. And a bunch of them are telling me that I'm a charlatan and I'm a preacher, and I'm preaching stuff that just straight up doesn't work. Because phone is bullshit. It's an interruption. Nobody likes it. And it does have me thinking a little bit, right? About, is phone, like, I think we're in this world right now where, old school, like Gen Xers like me, who grew up on the phones, right? We're kind of in this transition phase where that we know how to manage towards numbers. So like hit the list, 50 dials, that's easy to manage towards, right? And we have this nostalgia for phone because phone is kind of how we grew up. But now as managers, we're now telling these kids, 22, 25, 26-year-old kids, to make calls. And obviously connect rates are going lower and that type of stuff. So I guess my question is legit to both of you. Is phone something that we still should be preaching as a very, very viable part of the contact strategy when it comes to reaching out? And James, because I think you're doing a lot of this, like, on a daily basis still right now, talk to me a little bit about this, because I want to make sure that we're not just spewing shit here, and we're actually saying stuff that matters and is real, not because it sounds good.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a great kind of jumping off point, right? Because the phone is a channel. It's a method of outreach. And from what I've seen, there are definitely sectors and niches where the phone does not work.
Right.
The people that you need to call that are your ideal customer, for whatever reason, it could be their title, it could be the type of industry. There's a million different reasons, but they're just not going to pick up the phone. Now, I'm also very wary of ever saying never in sales, right? Like never use the phone or never use email, right? So anybody that comes to me and says like never do this, I'm a little bit skeptical of that, right? But if you've put in the time and you've made the calls and you've had the 0.001 dial to connect, and you've done that for long enough to say, okay, well, these people aren't picking up the phone, let's look at another different channel. I think that's very valid, right? Now, there being in the outsourced sales development world, I can tell you there are industries and there are niches where people are definitely still picking up the phone, right? And you can make 100 to 150 cold calls if you've got the technology, if you're getting up there into the 400 and the 500 and the 600 dials. I mean, you're going to have conversations and you're going to book meetings over the phone. It happens every single day, but it absolutely is dependent on your industry, who your ICP is. So it's not a blanket statement by any means, but in my opinion, it definitely still works. You just have to be willing to try it to see if it does for you.
I hear you. Daryl, what are you seeing out there with the numbers that you're seeing with all the stuff that's going through your systems?
So you talked about you being a Gen Xer, so I'm in that same group too. I know you're probably looking at me thinking he's clearly a millennial. I'm not. I know you're shocked. James stole half my answer, so I'm already pissed off. It all depends on the channel. It absolutely depends on the channel. All right. It is a channel. All right. To John's point, sure, when we grew up and we started our career, it was yellow pages and working your way and just dialing, and that's all you had to do, right? But it's a channel. I had somebody the other day say to me, oh, it's all multi-channel is the new way of selling. No, it's not. It's always been multi-channel. It's just different channels. When we did it, it was phone and direct mail and bingo cards and all the other wonderful shit. All right, that's what we had. Now it's social and phone and email, but it's always been multi-channel. So it's 2020, nothing's changed. But to James's point, it does depend on your industry. So for example,
so we got a question as you're answering. Sorry,
Yeah.
We're asking questions like what ICP, where does it work, right? So as you're giving this, yeah,
no problem. So I was actually going to get to that. So you need to understand the noise is largely of our industry, whether it's on social or blogs or Medium or LinkedIn or whatever. It's heavily influenced by by high tech, the high tech industry, especially SaaS. Does phone work in that? Not as well.
Yep.
Full disclosure. But you look at something like VanillaSoft, right? We have 18% of our base is high tech. The rest is like insurance, finance, healthcare, manufacturing. Why did I bring that up? These are industries that are not trendsetters. They're laggards, and they're industries that are largely driven by the phone. And so for those industries, it works great. Yeah. Now, great is all relative. We studied 2,000. We did a survey just a few months ago of 2,000 B2B buyers. And we said, what do you prefer? And the options were basically social, email, phone, SMS. And we asked them how that changes through the buying stage, from top of funnel to middle of funnel to bottom of funnel. And lo and behold, guess what? Email was always number one. Big surprise. Yeah. Number two was phone, and it was noticeable. Like, it was big. And then here's the thing. As you progress through the funnel, because here's the thing, not everybody's coming at you with it completely green. Sometimes you're hitting people and they're halfway through their funnel already because they're already researching it. So the phone becomes more and more pronounced. Last thing, research will say, our data backs is up, depending on the industry and whatnot. A lot of C-level executives, upwards of 60%, actually prefer the phone. Yeah, it's a bitch to get a hold of them. Yeah, your connection rate, you might have 2 conversations a day. All right. But yeah, it matters. But manage your expectations. It's only one channel of many.
And I think that's actually also, and the reason I say this is because I think there is a generational component to this as well. Because, Daryl, you and I grew up on the phone, I actually don't mind on the phone. So when you're talking about executives, they're of a certain age, right? And we're just used to it. So we don't mind picking up the phone where, yeah, maybe millennials and that type of stuff, when they fully take over in those decision roles, maybe phone will die, whatever, in the majority of industries. But I'm seeing executives still pick up. and just to hit on some of the other people's questions about ICP, like tech is tough, you know, like CIOs, CTOs, analysts, like forget about analysts. Analysts don't ever have phones. Like don't even
Ever.
try in that world, right? So what are you seeing, James? Like like the biggest challenge I see right now is actually connect rates. Like that's why I used to shit on stuff like InsideSales.com and those auto dialers or like Connect and Sell, because I was like, oh, they're generic and they force a generic approach. But now I've actually flipped my opinion on those, because I'm looking at them saying, actually now they're really valuable, because now they can churn through a bunch of calls to get the connect rates, because you used to be able to make 100 dials, get probably, I don't know, 20 to 25 conversations going. Of those 10 turn into like real legit conversations, maybe 2 to 3 meetings. Now you make 100 dials, you might get 1 or 2 conversations at best. So outside of connect rates, what are you seeing as the biggest challenge in the phone right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts, you know, in the questions I've seen, you know, well, let's define what working is the phone working, being able to connect with people, or connecting with people and then having a conversation that leads to something meaningful? Well, you've got to start, are you finding and connecting with the people, right? I mean, the connect rate is the beginning point of everything. And I think one of the biggest things that I've run into in my career is not looking far back enough in the process. So you're gearing up to make, you know, start your cold calls, you're in a new role, whatever. What's the data look like? To me, it's about the data. It's about how clean are these contact records? Do we have direct dials? Are we going to, you know, have we mapped out phone trees? Have we thought about cutting down that time that it's going to take us to find these right people by doing some work way up, kind of up the funnel, I guess you could call it, right? Like, so for me, that's where it starts. That's how you solve for connect rates, is doing everything you can using the best data providers. There are services out there that you can bring in that can cleanse your data. I mean, it's worth it to take those steps, because I've been there, I've been in that seat. You put all this work into your scripts and the things you're going to say, and then you make a day of cold calls and don't connect with anybody, and you've got 18 bad numbers, and it was a waste of your time. So for me, that's where it starts. It starts with clean data.
And I think I 100% agree. I think if you have that data, and that's what we're going to talk about next, about time blocking and the importance of that. Daryl, I like, if we were to talk about opportunities, right? So we talk about the challenges right now, but let's talk about the opportunities. Why do you think phone is still provides a very good opportunity for the right industries, for the right ICPs, that type of thing?
Okay, but I want to address one thing first. I want to, because you told me I could push back, so here I am pushing back.
Yeah.
I think connect rates, I think it's a bullshit red herring. Yes, it's an issue, but this is why it's bullshit. It's bullshit because, yeah, you're not going to always have a connection. However, you got to play the long game. In other words, you get that, you might get a voicemail, you can leave that voicemail. I'm going to hear you, and I'm going to, you know, it's going to take 9.2 attempts. It's the latest data from Bridge Group before I, you know, when that's social and that's phone and that's email, before I finally go, okay, man, you're relentless, I give up. Without that, I don't hit 9.2. So the connection rate, don't view it as how many conversations. I mean, what's the data I saw? It was like, you know, 1% of calls result in any kind of appointment. But
Right.
in aggregate, all those touches, they matter. So this is just part of that. Now, you mentioned opportunities.
Yeah.
There's a lot. So we talked about the repetition, the branding. That actually is an opportunity, because if I leave a voicemail because I don't connect with you, I now get to tell you who I am, give you my branding, do my value prop, whatever I want to do that I wouldn't be able to do. You get to, if you might have a live conversation. Okay, you're bitching and moaning, but if you have a live conversation, you're high-fiving afterwards if it goes well. Right? And worst case, you have a live conversation and they say no, and no matter what you do, it's a no. That's okay. Celebrate it, because you know why? You're never going to waste your time on them again. You're going to move on to the next one, because time is money. So that's the big thing. The one thing I do want to say is this. You made a comment. I saw it on the comments as well, John, where you said people talk about fear of interruption.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's, again, another red herring, because here's the thing. If I have this wonderful thing called call display, and when I answer the phone, I've already given you permission to interrupt me.
Yep.
If I don't want to take this call, I just go reject.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. It's like this, oh, you interrupted me. Well, then why the did you pick up the phone?
Mhm,
You know what I
mhm.
mean? Like, it's not like my phone is like I hid it and I pretended like I was your mom calling. You know what I mean? Like, you picked up the phone, jackass. So
It's true.
why it
No,
makes
that's
it
a fantastic point.
right.
Yeah.
I- and I do want to hit on, because there was a question here from Sai Prasad about voicemails, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, Daryl. Like, people ask now, like, why should you leave voicemails? Nobody calls you back. Well, I'll tell you why I leave voicemails. Not because I expect callbacks, is because my email response rates go up when I leave.
Yes.
Mhm.
We did
Yeah.
2 cadences. We ran a cadence where it was like a fully just email cadence with calls, but without, I'm sorry, calls and emails, but without voicemails.
Yep.
And then we did calls and emails with voicemails. It was a 13% increase on the conversion ratio of the two, same type of persona, same type of person that we're going after. It was a 13% increase. So if you're there, you might as well leave them. We'll talk about the best practices for that. But
But let me throw something on the voicemails, because I
Yeah.
know I saw Morgan posting on this the other day, and I jumped in there, and I saw you did too, John. Which was he was sharing how, leaving voice messages on LinkedIn is like killer,
Yeah.
huge response rate.
Massive.
This just in, kids, when you leave a voicemail, okay, when you leave a message on LinkedIn, you're leaving a freaking voicemail. Don't mean to rock your world.
Right. Well, and we're going to get to that too, just for everybody out there. You can leave. We're going to give that's going to be one of the 10 things is voicemails and video through LinkedIn, and you don't even have to have LinkedIn Sales Navigator or anything like that. So we'll get to that. But let's get into this fear factor here, right? So, because I do think there's and I will say I think there's a generational component to this where, for me, it was sink or swim. It's here's the phone, and that's what you had, right? But now kids coming into sales now, they have a million different channels to leverage, and the easiest one is email, because it's just not. And we also get this endorphin rush when somebody opens up the email. It's like, yay, they opened it, but like, really, who cares? But how do we so how do you, James, like for you, how do you overcome the fear of making a call? Because it's not a natural thing. Like it doesn't, we all know what getting a cold call feels like and how annoyed we get when we get them and we happen to pick up the phone. So
Yeah.
I think there's that, I don't want to bother anybody. So how do you personally get over that with what you do?
Well, it's interesting because I've seen a shift. When I first started as an inside salesperson in like 2014, there was nobody would look bad on a sales leader for saying like, hit the phones. There's no question. You have to make a bunch of cold calls. Do it now. Like, that was being a great sales leader. Like,
Totally.
nobody was going to question that. Right. So I didn't have any choice. Very much the same. Like, it was like sink or swim. So that's how I fell into it. But as I went through my career, there were sales floors 2017, 2018 that I walked on where nobody was making any calls. And the mantra was, hey, like, we're not tracking activities. Like, just get it done however you need to get it done. If that's on the phone, that's fine. If that's email, that's fine. And so it's been interesting to see this kind of leadership style shift feed into people being like, I don't have to make any cold calls. Hell yeah, I'm going to set up 18 different email sequences and get creative with my direct mail and send videos and do everything I can to avoid picking up the phone, because it sucks. And your brain is wired to avoid things like cold calling. So for me, I had a very real experience with cold call fear, right? I mean, I went 3 months as a BDR with a quota to set meetings and reach out to people, cold outreach, and I didn't pick up the phone because I was trying to get fancy with all these other things. And it because it's a channel and it's a valuable channel and it's part of an omni-channel approach, things started going downhill. And so for me, what I had to do, a few things. I had to get off the sales floor because I was on a quiet sales floor. Everybody was emailing.
Yes.
Everybody was emailing and had their little, and it was all cool and good vibes. So I had to go into a different room.
Mm-hmm.
I just would book a conference room and go in there for an hour. That was my first step, right? Hated it. Still didn't like, it's not like after that first hour or a couple of hours of I didn't book a meeting the first day I started cold calling after 3 months. No, it sucked. And so what I did the next day was I got one of my colleagues and scheduled time with him to make sure that I did it again. Cause I already knew, I was like, I'm not going to want to do this again. So you bring somebody else in That's a huge tip for me. Like, back yourself into a corner by committing to somebody else that, hey, we're going to sit here together and we're going to make some damn cold calls.
Love it.
And that's it. And when you're that far under, right, when you're that far away from the phone, it's just about getting there and picking it up.
Yeah.
And so get away from the quiet sales floor, or maybe it's a loud sales floor. Maybe it's too much going on, right? I've found that being alone and having that freedom to kind of know you can screw up and say the wrong thing and nobody's going to be like, whatever, huge. Involving somebody else, putting it on a calendar, backing yourself into a corner that way. And then it's about that constant kind of in-between preparation so that you feel comfortable and knowledgeable about what you're doing, right? That's what keeps it going. So very real thing for me that I've experienced, in a very real way. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think I couldn't agree more. I think preparation overcomes fear, right? So like and I'm going to just throw a bunch of tips out there for everybody, is I don't recommend, I actually think, I think cold call blitz days are a terrible idea. Any leader out there who has cold call blitz days, first of all, there's not enough Red Bull out there for me to get hyped up for a day's worth of cold calling. Like, you're out of your freaking, you know how much water I'll drink on a day's worth of cold calling? I will drink 1.5 gallons of water. You know why? Because I'll go
bathroom. Exactly.
And so, but if you do them in hour chunks, I call them power hours, right? You do them in hour chunks and you do a prep. So you get all your numbers right, you get your names down, and you don't just get a list. The problem is everybody just comes to a call blitz with a list. And the list is literally all over the place. It's a CTO in this industry. It's a CFO in that industry. It's a director of IT in this industry. And I'm sorry, I'm not smart enough to have relevant, good conversations with each of those people when they pick up the phone. So with that approach, I have to be generic. I have to say, tell me about your business. I have to say, we're the leading provider of whatever, right? Or tell me about your priorities. But if I call every CTO in the healthcare industry and I have my message down and 2 or 3 questions that I could ask them that'll get the conversation going, and maybe even a case study that I can reference of a client just like them, and I get a list of 20 or 30 of them that are in that profile, I can all come, hey, the reason for my call today is we're showing CTOs in the healthcare industry how to rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. That momentum gives me, first of all, I'm going to get better and better and better at it as I go. And second of all, if holy shit, somebody does pick up, I actually have something to say that's relevant to that group. And that to me is what gives me confidence, is the preparation for it and knowing what I'm talking about, and not just having a pitch that's this generic elevator pitch and praying from a number standpoint. And the last thing I'll mention, then hand it over to you, Daryl, is the other thing. I love what you said there, James, is teaming up. One of the easiest ways to get over cold call fear, I did the same thing as you. I grabbed a room by myself, put the headset on so I could be me, right?
Yep.
And I think the open office environment destroys the phone. I think it destroys phone.
Horrible
I love
idea.
it for the whole collaboration and teamwork crap, right? But when it comes to phone, I think the open office ruins it, right?
Yeah.
So what I do is I'll grab a room and 3 other people, grab a speakerphone, 3 other people, and have a round robin cold calling on the speakerphone.
Yeah.
The coaching, the live coaching that happens in that, and you don't even have to have a manager in there, by the way, because to say the 3 of them,
I would actually recommend don't keep them far away from the room,
or have the manager in the cold call blitz with you making the calls.
Yeah.
See how bad they are, right? Because they
that's
suck
the
too.
ticket into the room.
Just let everybody know managers suck too at making phone calls. So, but if say the 3 of us are making calls, right? I call in, I get shredded by a gatekeeper. They hang up on me mid-sentence. Obviously, James, you're next. You're not going to do what I just did. You're going to do something different, right? And if you do something smooth and get through, Daryl, you're going to follow what he did and avoid what I did. And in a very short period of time, the amount of confidence that goes up is through the roof.
Yep.
Daryl, what do you have to add as far as overcoming fear?
Well, I feel like you guys have taken all the good stuff, so now I'm pissed. It's okay.
I'll give you the next one then.
No. I'm a marketer. I've always got opinions, John. Don't be stupid. You hit on one already. I want to just really make sure people got hyper target, to John's point, right? Just focus on one super hyper target ideal customer profile. Maybe it's head of marketing in a high tech SaaS company with less than 10 million in revenue, because you can really nail the value prop and how you matter to them. And to John's point, with subsequent calls, you just improve because you learn what works and what doesn't work. Hyper target's the first thing. That's a practical way of how to get better and build confidence. That doesn't necessarily overcome the initial fear. So the initial fear, full disclosure, I hated this for years. People would say, "But Prayal, your mindset, it's all in your mind. You gotta have the right mindset." I don't know what the hell that means. And then one day I had an epiphany. I'm like, oh, I'm giving myself permission to not take this personally. I'm giving myself permission to have perspective on what the hell just transpired here.
Yeah.
Benjamin Dennehy makes an example, and I don't want to name drop, but he's got a great point. He goes, mindset starts with understanding root cause, which is your parents have taught you growing up. You're nice to people. You use your manners. You don't interrupt them. You respect your elders. You do all this wonderful stuff. Then you get your first job and you say, go be rude to people, interrupt them, do everything you were taught not to do. So you have to unprogram yourself. So just figure that shit out. Yeah. The last thing is, if you've got a few bucks, go buy a book called Go for No. It's written by Andrea Waltz. It'll change your life on this front, on fear. The premise is really simple. Right now, when you're making that call, which is why you have the fear, you're like, it's going to go yes, or it's going to go no. I really hope it goes yes. Oh, shit, it went no. I suck. Yeah. Where the premise really is, no. Screw that approach. I'm going for no. And I'm going to set goals. I want 10 no's this hour. And if I don't get a no, I'm going to be pissed off that I got a yes. And when you change your mindset, it just changes everything. So that's my advice on overcoming fear.
I love it. And actually, I know I'm skipping ahead here to one of the slides about scripts. What are you guys' thoughts on scripts to help overcome fear, or at least help gain confidence to start with? James, did you start with a script? Because I rail on scripts all the time as far as, I like structure, not scripts. Richard Harris and I got in a big argument about this. But I do think that there is something to be said for when you don't know what the hell you're talking about. A script is something that at least gets you started. Does that help?
Yeah. I mean, if I think back to my first day, I had been a retail salesperson for like 5 years. So I wasn't a green salesperson, but picking up the phone was a new thing. If I think about to my first day, if I hadn't had a script, and I can't even remember if it was any good, if it actually worked, that didn't matter. If I didn't have a script, I would have felt absolutely lost. I mean, straight up, right? Because there's just so much going on in your own mind, and you're new at your job, and there's all these things you've got to say and get across, and you're basically living in a world that's the opposite of what Daryl just described. You're totally attached to outcomes. You're totally feeling like, if I don't do this well, I'm a failure. And so that script absolutely helps with that kind of just initial confidence. Anytime that I've worked with folks that are new, like brand new to sales, have never done any selling, and are picking up the phone for the first time, absolutely handing over a script. Gotcha. Different parts of your career, throughout my career, I've not used them. I've used them, there's and I think we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's, specifically for overcoming fear. Absolutely. Yeah,
at least it gives you a guideline, right? So, All right, let's keep going here. So let's talk time blocking. We talked about this, right? I said, I can't stand cold call blitz days. I think that's a waste of time. And I think it's just stupid. And I still see like people celebrating like the century mark. Like, oh, you made 100 dials today. Like, oh God, I want to throw up. Is it practical though, from a time blocking standpoint with all the other stuff that we're doing? And does time blocking help, Daryl?
Yeah. Oh, it's huge. And it's not just our data that shows that in our conversations. I see this over and over again. So let me frame it in a way that you'll understand where I'm coming from. Time blocking is you, the sales professional, going on the offensive. You're saying, in this time block, I am committing to doing a certain number of calls. And when you do that, no one else can interrupt it. No emails, no customer interruptions, nothing. You defend that like you defend anything else that's near and dear to you, because it's core to your success. Now, you don't do time block just for the sake of time blocking. When you go into that, you're going to have goals. Like, I need to do X number of calls. And then after every call you're doing, right, you actually want to self-evaluate. How did I do? What did I learn? How can I change my script or my value prop or whatever it might be? Time blocking is time for you. This is you time. just to be better at your craft without interruption. James just said it fundamentally. He said, I had to intentionally go to another room and I had to commit for like an hour and I hated it, but then I got better and then I did this and I did that. That's what time blocking is all about. So big fan of time blocking. And here's the thing. I've heard Weinberg say you don't prospect by accident. I've heard Hunter say thinking about prospecting is not prospecting. In other words, you got to do it. You got to do shit. So just block the time. Just block the frickin' time and just do it. Man up, do it.
And actually, I think you said something that was very important there, which is what it also allows you to do, not only focus, right, on you and your development, but also like having a very singular focus, but it also allows you to test. And somebody asked, like, why not call blitz days? Because call blitz days are all over the place and they're a waste of time. If you ask me to make 50 dials in a day and I sprinkle them throughout the day, it's brutal to hit 50 dials. But if you tell me, John, I usually do a half-hour prep, 45-minute prep for a 1-hour call blitz, I can bang out 20, 25 dials in an hour, no problem, if I got my numbers right and I got my message down. So I can do an hour and a half in the morning, hour and a half in the afternoon. There's my 50 dials. But a day, I usually find people struggling at the end of the day to hit their 50. Yeah. And then, but the other benefit to that approach is, say you do 25 and 25, well, you can split test, which I'm a huge fan of, right? So say you're calling into CTOs in healthcare. You come up with 2 different messages for CTOs in healthcare. And in the morning, you make 25, 30 dials with this approach. And in the afternoon, you make 25, 30 dials with this approach. And you test to see which one works better. And you can only do that by being hyper-focused in chunks of time, at least in my experience.
Yeah.
The A/B testing, I am a massive fan around. And you're doing that. You talked about using voicemails or not doing voicemails, right? Why did you do that? Because you wanted to figure out what's the best approach so I can have a higher conversion rate, so I can close more shit, so I can make more money. But you wouldn't have known that if you hadn't done the tests. And time blocks are a great way to do that. I'm sorry, James, I cut you off.
No, I mean, that's absolutely true. And to John's point, I think the biggest, past just, it's good for you. You have to do it. On the individual side, when you're cold calling a lot, and if you're using technology that allows you to make hundreds and hundreds of dials a day, then you get into a really interesting place where you have lots of data to work with, right? And so you can start building, and you could do this in a Google Sheet. You start building out and look at the dial to connect rates on the times that you're calling, right? And you start being able to be data driven about, hey, when we call this list of CIOs, nobody picks up in the morning. So nobody needs to even waste their time, right? And then you start solving for things like connect rates. And then you start solving for things like even maybe cold call fear, right? Because if you're calling at the optimal time, shit's going to go better. So you're going to feel better about the whole experience, right? And so I think it's again, an integral part in using the phone in a constructive way that's going to kind of move the needle forward. So I think you have to do it.
What I love about that, I'm seeing there's a question here, Frank saying, what time works well for connection rate? And it's going to vary by your product and your ICP and your region. That aside, your point, James, about having that volume of data, and John's point about testing, that's how you get your answer. Don't ask us what the right time is. You figure it out. You've got the calls. You've got the data. Just go invest a month or 2, 6 weeks, figure it out.
I couldn't agree more. Like all these data, like I think it's good to use all this data that's out there as kind of benchmarks, but then use that as a benchmark for your own data and be your own internal testing system. I don't think enough sales reps are scientists with this stuff as far as figuring out what works. They just try to do the numbers game. But if you do the numbers game and you apply science and split testing and trying different approaches, you can start to hone in on the times a day, the personas and everything else that works for you and your client in your business versus everybody else's.
Yep.
All right, so let's talk about objections because this is the biggest one, right? Oh, nope. Well, let's see. Oh, I went too far. Sorry. Opening your call. Okay, so let's talk about this. How do you start? So somebody picks up the phone and you shit yourself because you just made 100 dials and you're like, right? And most sales reps are like, well, the leading provider of, right? So James, let's talk to you. When literally, and I don't want to be very, very tactical here. When somebody picks up the phone, what are the words that come out of your mouth?
Yeah. So sometimes, and this has happened to me in my career when I've been sitting there for 45 minutes and I'm dozing off and somebody picks up. Yeah. Oh my God. And then click. and then you just hang up.
I've hung up before. I've straight
Yeah.
up hung up before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just go ahead and put that out there on a cold calling webinar that's a real thing. No, I think for me, something that helped me with the opening was it's just about winning very small, like almost mini contracts.
Yep.
Right. Just very small mini contracts. And for me, first of all, this starts with data, right? So if you have good data, you know that the person you're calling is the person you're calling. Because one of my least favorite ways to open is, "Hi, is this John? Is this John?"
Hi,
it's
this
like,
is James Bodden. Is this John? Yeah, I love that.
yeah. So, if you're at that point, right, and you've done the work way up the funnel and you've got good data, then it's, "John, hey, this is James. I know I'm calling out of the blue." So you address the obvious, right? That's huge for me. I know I'm calling out of the blue. Totally respect your time. Wondering if you have a few seconds for me to share why I called. And it just sets you up for that next little mini contract. One of the things, because for me, it's a constantly evolving thing, and it's something that I've struggled with because I've tried the, "How's your day going? How are you? What's up? My name's James and I'm calling from ABC company and my purpose is to," I've tried all of it. And I never really felt like I found anything that worked consistently. And I was actually reading an article about JFK and his speeches, right? Everybody knows how powerful his speeches are. And his speechwriter, a guy named Ted Sorensen, has a quote where he says, "Speechwriting comes down to really just 4 words: brevity, levity, charity, and clarity." And I think that is a fantastic way to look at an opening and kind of just a cold call all the way around, right? You want to be brief. You want to address the situation. "Hey, this is a ridiculous thing. I'm calling you out of the blue here," right? You can be a little bit self-deprecating. The charity is, let me respect your time and ask you if I can share why I'm calling, and then share why you're calling and it's valuable to them. Maybe, maybe not. Be open to that. And then clarity, right? Be very clear. Don't be mysterious. Right. I think one of the worst pieces of advice I got early in my career was, be sneaky. Try and be sneaky to get around somebody or get them to take a meeting or just throw something on their calendar. It's like, no way, home slice. I can't do that. So I think that opening of just being, hey, knowing who you're calling. "Hey, John, this is who I am. I know what I'm doing here. I'm calling out of the blue. Before I talk any further and assume anything, do you even have time for me?" Right? And there's probably a million debates out there, right? And of the right way to do it. But on a day in and day out basis, when I'm picking up this phone, it seems to win me that at least first couple mini contracts.
And I think that's another piece. It's like you test, right? You test even how you introduce yourself matters. Daryl, are you seeing any data out there of what works more than what works better than not?
No, because it really varies by, to your point, we talked about earlier, industry and your ICP, right? So no, I don't see a lot. I mean, I can tell you data for certain industries, but even then it's not really relevant to this conversation. My answer would be to you, what you just said, testing what works. What I do know is this: there's kind of 2 schools of approach, and I'm seeing that in the comments coming up. So let me speak to that, and then I'll shut up, John. Which is, you either do the classic, "Hi, this is a sales call," right? "Hi, this is a sales call. Here's my pitch," and you make your ask. "Can I have 30 seconds of your time?" Right? So, "Hi, this is my sales call. Hi, full disclosure, this is a sales call. But I'm working with clients just like you, and what I have to tell you might intrigue you. Can I have 30 seconds of your time to share that with you?" And then the other approach says, "That sucks. Never do that. That's awful." You want to open up with kind of a question and a value pop, and then ask the question, which is really either going to give you a yes or no. And now you've got permission. Net, what do both of these have in common? It's you're asking a question. "Hi, can I have 30 seconds, or can I share this with you, or do you know this is a problem for you?" Whatever it might be. And when they give you an answer, they're also giving you permission. So if you're doing the, "Can I have 30 seconds or 27 seconds? Yes." Now you've got permission. You can do your thing. And they still feel like they have control. "I gave you 30 seconds, no more. And then if you can intrigue me, then we'll talk," right? Because what they don't want to do is, they're in control. They want to keep feeling that they're in control. You want to seek the permission. That approach works. I personally have seen the most success when it's a combination, when you hyper target, back to what I said before, and then you do that high, full disclosure. This is a sales call. But not everybody likes that. To your point, John, if I'm bopping all over the place with crappy lists and whatnot, then that would never work.
So I'll give you my exact approach. And I'll parlay it against one that data says, and this is one of our sponsors, Gong, because I love their blog. If anybody's not reading the Gong blog, you should read it because it's all data oriented. My approach, because I like the pattern interrupt, right? Because when you call up and say, hi, this is John Barrows from J Barrows Sales Training, it's almost like this Pavlov dog, like, this is a sales call.
Conditioned sales call.
Phone, right? And you're not listening to what the words that are coming out of my mouth. Like, you're just waiting for me to take a breath so you can say, take me off your list, send me some information, I'm not interested. So I break that pattern by saying, hey, thanks for taking my call. Do you have a few moments? So I don't even introduce myself first. I literally, because first of all, that gives me a chance to relax. So when somebody picks up, I don't freak out. It's an automatic thing for me to say, hey, thanks for taking my call. Do you got a couple of minutes?
Yeah. So you're asking a question, you're seeking permission, right? And they're giving you a yes or no, and that they feel like they're in control.
99% of the time, they say, well, not really, but what?
Yes,
but
exactly.
What do you want? And now, to your point, Daryl, now you just gave me permission to talk. So now you're listening. But then what I have to do is I have to come really strong with the reason for my call. So what I'll say is, well, this is John with J Barrows Sales Training. And actually, the reason for my call today is we're working with a lot of other VPs of sales just like you, whose main priority is increasing conversion ratios over the phone. And we're showing their sales reps how to, blah, blah, blah. And I was just wondering, and my call to action there is, and I just wanted to see if I could get 10 to 15 minutes of your time to have that conversation. What's the best way to make that happen? Now, you could say, let's get off the phone now. Like you could say tomorrow at 3:00. And I'm like, I'm happy, right? Because you're not ready for this call. And I'm probably not ready for this call, right? So the ideal state is, and this goes to another question somebody had here, which is, what's the goal of a cold call? I think the goal of a cold call is to set up, is to, do a very brief qualification piece just to see if they look like a duck, smell like a duck, whatever, and then schedule a more deep dive. But you still have to you have to share some information. You have to get some information, right? So that's why I say, hey, the reason for my call today is blah. And I was just looking for about 10 to 15 minutes of your time to have that conversation. Now, you could say tomorrow at 3:00, we're good. But I would say 99% of the time I get, well, you caught me now. What do you want to talk about? Which is why I'm going to go back to why I think it's so important to be hyper-focused when you're making your calls. Because if I'm calling every VP of sales in the SaaS industry and I have my name, my message, my questions, and my case study ready, when you say go, I have a chance. And then I'll do the Sandler upfront contract and say, well, look, I know you weren't expecting my call, so I'm going to be brief here. I have a few quick questions I have to ask here for you about your sales team and that type of stuff. After that, I'll share with you some components of our solution that I think make the most sense. And from there, you can tell me whether or not it makes sense to take the next steps or not. So I'll contract that, right?
What I love about what you just said is the question is, what's the purpose of a call, right? Spin selling, the purpose of a call is to advance, to continue, to actually take the order, or to get a no, go away, no sale here. That's your purpose of a call, not to close. 9 times out of 10, it's not to close a deal, it's to advance. Again, it's mindset. My goal here is to get another meeting. That's all it is. Now, interesting sidebar. I'm not advocating this. I'm just telling you, I read something the other day that, in fact, you talk about the pattern interrupt. Apparently, there's been some research done, and the most successful pattern interrupt, which is, we like to say, hey, how you been? That's bad. But if they would say, how you doing? That's bad. It's actually, how have you been?
I know. I saw that on Gong.
Exactly.
By the way, and I was going to bring that up. I'm trying that right now. So at 44 years old, I'm trying the split test because I've been doing the, hey, thanks for taking my call. Do you got a couple of minutes for 10 years now? And it's worked for me.
Yeah.
Now, because of that data that Gong said, but this is the way it goes. It goes, hi, this is John Barrows. So you say your full name, first name, last name, and your company. So, because the two things that people are trying to figure out are who are you and what do you want? Mm-hmm. Right? So you start with, hi, this is very formal. Hi, this is John Barrows with J Barrows Sales Training. How have you been? So it's kind of like a mullet, like, business in the front, party in the back, right?
Yes.
So you come at them like, you don't know me, but then you shift over to, how have you been? And I'm literally doing it right now, and I'm listening to people's brain break.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm good. How
I've been good. I got it's exactly. And that truly is a pattern interrupt. Now, I do want to mention though something on, because we're talking about, opening your call and all that wonderful stuff and what works. We talked about Gong said this. So those who don't know, Gong is like a conversational analytics tool. Why does that matter? It matters because they're able to actually record and do all this analysis of all your calls, not just you, but your whole team. So you can start to do your own testing, not just you personally, but the whole team, to see in practice different openings and how they work, and use the tool to tell you what works for your ICP in your industry.
James, you want to chime in on anything left on this one?
No, I think, you know, kind of a thread that can go through all of this is whether you're trying approach A, B, or C, none of it will matter if you sound dead on the phone. So sit up
Love that
straight,
point.
smile,
Stand
up, walk around, laugh a little bit, like just kind of be ready to, and that comes from, you know, not taking yourself too seriously and all those things. But yeah, I mean, tonality is huge. I think if you're ignoring that piece of it, it won't matter what the hell you say if you sound dead when you're saying it. So I think that's a good kind of end piece on that opening.
Best story I had from years ago was from a non-salesperson. I do a lot of voiceover work. And so I said, you know, I should take some lessons. So I had a voiceover coach, and the voiceover coach was, yeah, your technique's good. You know what you're not doing, Daryl? What? I want you to change something. Okay. Before you actually do the voiceover. Yep. I want you to smile. And I'm like, I don't feel like smiling. It's just a voiceover. I want you to effing smile. Yeah. Fine. And I effing smiled, and then I did the recording, and it was like way freaking better, and it pissed me off that it was better, but it's just simple technique, man. It's true. Yeah. Love it.
I smile and dial, as cheesy as it sounds. I used to have a rep that when he was in a good mood, he would annihilate the phones. I mean, he was so good, it was ridiculous. Like, I learned stuff from him. But when he was in a bad mood, like, he would straight up offend people. So I legit, and I know this is cheesy, I put a mirror in his cube, and I said, look, if you come in today and if you are smiling, I want you on the phones all day long. But if you're not smiling, if you're pissy, like, please send emails. And he would legit come in and he would say, John, I'm in a really bad mood. I'd be like, good, email day, good job, email day. Yep. And then he'd come in and be like, no, I'm on fire. I'd be like, yes, go for it. So let's keep going here because we only got some time left. Scripts, I think we already answered this question. Start with them, but then make them your own and turn them into you, right? Don't just read the script. Everybody knows what that is. Objections. This is a big one, right? Because this, I mean, inherently we get them all, right? And everybody gets the same ones. We're not interested. This isn't a priority for me right now. Send me information from gatekeepers, right? Like, why don't you send me the information? I'll forward along to whoever might be. So any tips or ideas on how to deal with objections right up front on that cold call?
Yeah.
So go ahead, James.
Yeah. I mean, I might have maybe a little bit of an unpopular opinion on this. And it goes back to kind of the way that I see, you know, if we're talking about SDRs, BDRs, folks that are on the phone. To me, the best BDRs and SDRs are marketers until they get somebody to respond to them either on the phone or via email. They have that marketing mindset, right? They're just trying to generate attention, say, hey, we're over here doing something cool. Maybe you want to check it out, right? So for me, objections really, I've gotten to the point in my career where I really don't give a shit about objections because I've built cadences and other touch points across different channels to where if I call somebody one time for the first time and they give me a brush off, oh, not right now. Oh, I'm so busy. Oh, whatever that very surface level thing is, I'm just going to say, sounds great. And I'm going to let him go because that's not the last time that you're going to hear from me, especially and that's because especially if we haven't gotten anywhere, if we haven't had a meaningful conversation, to me, at a certain stage, depending on where you are in your sales process and growth as a sales organization, you know, to me, a goal of a cold call is a meaningful conversation, right? Where you're able to gain some sort of information. Is this the right person? Do they give a shit about what you're doing? Whatever it is. So that's the first part of it, right? I mean, when it comes to these objections that you know are surface level, sometimes it's worth it to not even worry about trying to figure out a way to combat it because I've tried that too. And you're just and you're just talking in circles, right? They're just not at a good point. And you call that person back 2 weeks later after you send them a funny email about the cold call that you made to them the previous week saying, hey, thanks for being so gracious and picking up the phone. And you don't get a response, but you call them back and they say, oh, you know what? Yeah, it was a bad day. What do you got going on? I mean, I can't tell you how many times that's happened, and it goes towards what Daryl said earlier, the number of touch points. So on your first go rounds, right, I think if you're smart about the way that you've built out your outreach cadences and you're thinking like a marketer of just trying to get somebody's attention, then yeah, you can brush those brush offs. I mean, brush them off, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter. When it gets into actually handling objections, right? When you're at that point, they've given you some time. It's not just an immediate send me something or whatever. You know, I think one of the biggest things is to immediately positively react, like confirm what they said. You know, there's a rule in improv where you're never allowed to say no, right? So if somebody comes into the scene and they say, we're in Hawaii, you're not going to say, no, we're not, because it kills the vibe of what they're trying to build, right? So somebody says, oh, well, XYZ objection, fantastic. I totally understand that. I get that. That makes sense to me. Can you explain why that current vendor is working out so well for you? You know, something positive, let them know you hear them. You're not pissed off that they have an objection. You understand where they're coming from. And I think it goes towards having compassion and empathy for the people that you're calling, right? These objections, if you're into a little bit of a meaningful conversation, these objections, you know, it's your job to figure out what they really mean. And so you do that by making them feel comfortable right away. Like, yes, totally get it, Daryl. You have tons of people calling you all the time. Would you rather me send you an email? Would you rather me follow up in a few days when it's a better time? What's really going on here? You know, you can kind of start breaking down some of that fear just by being a decent person and having some compassion for the person that's trying to get you off the phone.
I think that compassion of like, and I'm going to tie that to what you said about like tips versus tricks, right? I love tips. I hate tricks.
Yeah.
And every secretary has heard, every gatekeeper has heard every trick out there. So stop it. Try to empathize with their position. I actually even have conversations with secretaries sometimes that say, hey, look, I know what your job is. You know what mine is. We could either do this the easy way or the hard way. Like the easy way is like, I'm not trying to sell you anything that you don't need. You fit a very similar profile to some clients that we're doing some great work for. And all I'm looking for is a 10 to 15 minute conversation with somebody on that end. And if it's not a need, I go away. Right. So like that empathy factor. But Daryl, any ideas on objection handling from your perspective?
Yeah, so I'll give you my answer, but I do want to comment. As James was talking, I was laughing about everything we've already talked about. So I'm going to role play. I'm James for a second. Hey, you know, it's James. You know, I don't have time right now. Okay, go forward a week later. He smiles. He dials. Then he's like, "Hey, it's James again. How you been?" It's like the perfect almost pattern interrupt because now there's familiarity and it totally works. So anyway, that was me being stupid.
It works though.
It's true.
It does work because he's got great energy, and now we're buds because we talked last week, and I was really cool to you. I let you get away with that stupid ass lame objection. I just let it go.
Yeah, and just real quick to your point, Daryl, I think I've had the best cold calls when I've cold called somebody, screwed up, they've hung up on me, and I call them back and say,
my bad.
My bad.
Yep.
I had just come from a crazy meeting or whatever. My mind was, you know, can we try this again? And just that sheer utter being a human, like I failed, have mercy on me. And it's not a pity thing, right? No. Because it's immediately you bring yourself back up, right? You're not spending the entire call being apologetic or, oh, I'm so sorry. It's like, hey, I screwed up, but let me show you my best version now. Boom, boom, boom. So yeah, I think that's fantastic. So,
the answer, I would say, this is textbook stuff, but it actually works out quite well. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get them to engage with you, right? Yep. And the objection is John talked about it. It's just an autopilot. Oh, it's a sales call. What excuse comes first? I have no time right now, right? Or I'm not interested. We know them all. The whole point here, if you're not doing it already, is you really want to deflect that by acknowledging their statement and then asking them to re-engage with the question. So I'm not interested. Okay. I hear you're not interested, but can I ask why you're not interested, right? Can I ask why you're not interested? Because your competitor, who's a client of mine, just achieved this. Silence, right? And they're going to answer you 9 times out of 10, even out of obligation. And that's okay. Now you're getting information, and that may result in, okay, I hear you, no problem. But you know what? This piece of content may be of interest to you. I'm going to send it to you. I'll follow up next week. So deflect, acknowledge, re-engage, get them talking.
I love it. Yeah. And this is, I'm going to go back to split testing on this one, everybody. Google best objection handling techniques. There's like 5 core ones. Feel, felt, found, right? Which I totally understand how you feel about that. Other people felt the same way with it. My only point on that one is, though, don't use the words feel, felt, found, right? Remember, I was like 23 years old. I learned that and I was all excited to go. Like, I busted out on a VP. I was like, I totally understand how you feel about that. Other people felt, and as soon as the word felt came out of my mouth, the guy goes, yeah, kid, don't try the feel, felt, found approach on me. Okay. I was like, no, but I just learned it. But you could say, look, I get it. Everybody I call doesn't want to talk to me. But after they spend 5 minutes with me listening to the value because of what we're doing for other companies like you, they realize it's worth at least 10 to 15 minutes to have a conversation. Can we make that happen? So there's feel, felt, found. Then there's the justification approach. Look, let me tell you why I'm calling you. Here's the reason why I'm calling you. And I think that's the big piece that people miss, because there's been a lot of questions on here about getting through gatekeepers and all that other stuff. There's no trick that's going to get through a gatekeeper. The one that I found the best is by doing a little bit of homework and having a legitimate reason for your call. So you go, I'll usually start with secretary picks up the phone. Hey, is Sarah there? I don't know who's calling. Well, this is John with J Barrow Sales Training. And actually, the reason I'm trying to reach out to Sarah is because, we're working with a lot of other VPs of sales just like her who are challenged in these areas. And they're actually leveraging our training to do this. And I was just wondering, what's the best way to get about 10 to 15 minutes on her calendar? Because it's not a gatekeeper's job to keep us out. It's their job to filter us. And if you got a VP of sales on the other end of that phone who's drowning and their conversion ratios are terrible, the reps are horrible on the phone, the gatekeeper is not doing their job by not letting you through, right? Now, you're not doing your job because you're not giving them good enough reason. So if you Google like the best objection handling techniques and then test those, like the clarification technique is the best one. And Daryl, you brought that up. Like, what do you mean? Yep. Like, what do you mean you're not interested? Tell me more about that. But then there's also one, James, you brought up, which is the preemptive strike, which is, hey, I know you weren't expecting my call, so I'll be brief. Like you call it out. Look, this is a cold call. I'm going to be brief. Yep. And the reason for my call today is boom. And you can kind of test those. But here's a tip for everybody out there. Pick one of the ones that you're getting crushed on, which is like, we're not interested, or send me information. Come up with 2 different ways of handling that. The next 50 dials, do it this way. The next 50 dials, do it that way. We're running up on time here. Let's get to, I want to do calls to action. Let's do this. What's the voicemail? Because we haven't talked about voicemails.
Yeah. And everybody's asking on the board there about the LinkedIn voicemail. So let me quickly throw that out there. Okay. So when you're in the LinkedIn app on your phone and you're messaging somebody, there's a couple of things you need to know. In the box where you write your message, to the right, you'll see a microphone symbol. Tap that. You can leave whatever voicemail you want to, and then press send. That's the first thing. Second thing is, you'll also, to the left of that box, you'll see a plus sign. Tap that, and all of a sudden, you'll see video comes up, and you can physically send them a video. So that's the LinkedIn voicemail or the LinkedIn video that John talked about as well. Quick and dirty. Use it. You'll love it.
Can you guys see my screen here, or is it still on the other presentation?
There you go. I can see it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'll just, this is that thing, but you have to adjust a small bit on that. You have to be one connected with them.
Yes.
You have to do it on your phone. You can't do it on your laptop. You have to do it on your phone, and you have to be one connected. And there's a video piece on there and a voicemail piece. They kick ass right now.
So here's the thing, guys. You want to test this legit offer? Follow me if you don't already on LinkedIn, and then I'll accept, and then you can send me a voicemail and I'll respond back.
Yep. So what's your voicemails, Daryl? What do they sound like?
Oh my gosh, my voicemails suck. Handling my voicemails suck. My voicemails are a glorified version of my opening, cold call when you answer the phone. Usually starts with me going, because I'm never prepared. But it's a quick and dirty value prop. I don't personally go into the voicemail expecting anything's going to happen other than to say, this is Daryl Prell, and this is the purpose of my call. And, I'll follow up in the next week. But in the meantime, you may want to check out this piece of content. I'll send it to you in an email. Boom, it's a touch point.
James.
Yeah, one of my favorite ones that I've been using recently is, hey, this is James calling with nothing urgent, but something that's important for you. Wanted to pick your brain, show you some things we're working on over here. Give me a call back. Here's my number.
Love it. Here's one this is the hardest thing we train on, by the way, the voicemail, but it's really effective. You don't start with your name first. You don't start with, hi, this is John Barrows from, because if they listen to the voicemail, that's a big F. But if they do, as soon as they hear, hi, this is John Barrows from J Barrow Sales Training, delete 90% of the time. Because either I know you and I think I know you, or I don't know you and I don't care. So what we do is, hey, James, the reason for my call today is we're working with other VPs of sales just like you who are really tasked with trying to get their reps on the phone and try to create more energy and conversion ratios. And we actually have a keep dialing workshop that gives them sales ready messaging that they can apply into their phone conversations, give them a lot more confidence. And I was wondering if you could call me back so we could chat about that to see if we could have the same impact on your business. My number is 617-529-7271. By the way, this is John Barrows with J Barrows Sales Training, 617-529-7271.
Last thing they hear.
That's a lot, right?
So-
You say it twice.
Yep.
But you start, because what that does real quick is it's a pattern interrupt. Because again, every voicemail sounds exactly the same. Hi, this is John Barrows from, hi, da, 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 da. And then it's, hi, the reason for my call today is so it's different. Second is it forces them to listen to the value proposition. Everybody wants to know who it is before they hang up that phone, right? So it's like, oh, who is this? Oh, damn, I didn't know you guys did that. And then the third benefit to that approach is if you screw up halfway through, you can hang up and they have no idea who you are. So you can have some fun with it.
So now I'll push back on that, John. When I hear the reason for my call,
Yep.
I scream sales guy, because the only people who ever say the reason for my call are people that I don't know. And that's because of my role. I have a budget, are sales reps. So I would love to test that, because I think that's as notorious as, hey, it's Daryl Prale from VanillaSoft. Just putting it out there to be devil's advocate.
Yeah, but think about it. If you're listening to a voicemail, somebody you know, then who gives a shit? If you don't know them, you want to get right to the point of why is this person calling me, right?
I hear you, but I'm already, just like you said, when I answered the phone with a bad intro, my mind goes into sales rep mode, and that changes my demeanor.
Try it out.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think maybe there's something to be said about voicemails in general, that maybe the idea is that they don't listen to them. They just see that you've left one.
Well, and
right. Just the awareness piece.
transcribes.
Yeah.
These
on
days it
mobile now.
transcribes so you can read it, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I like reading. Like I like leaving my voicemails as if I'm going to write them, and so that you're reading it straight through, like real quick. There's the point. Who's the person? That's why I'm calling, and it works. So.
Yeah.
Look, we're going over time here. There's a ton of questions we didn't get to. What we're going to do here is we are going to probably set up a separate time. And correct me if I'm wrong, my team here, but we're going to set up a separate time to go through those questions and get back to everybody on those, because we just did not. An hour is just not enough time to do all these topics justice. Hopefully, you all got some value out of this, as much as I did. James, Daryl, any final comments for everybody out there?
Yeah, the
Final
one.
tips.
Yeah, the one thing that I'll say, just because we didn't get to cover it, was on the call to action.
Mm.
One thing that I've been using that's been working, especially with some clients that it's been tough to get that first meeting, starting big with your ask and then working down to your small ask. And the big ask isn't actually anything you want them to ever participate in, right? So, hey, John, we've got this 3-hour webinar we're thinking about putting together, and we want you to sit on there as a panelist, right? And we've got all these cool ideas and all these things happening. And then we start a conversation, start talking about that. Well, you know what? This webinar, we're still kind of putting it together. It's 3 hours. I realize you may not even be interested in doing it when it comes down to it. Would 10, 15 minutes work for me to just kind of, for us to finish this conversation to see if we can, talk about X, Y, and Z? And it's not tricking anybody. You're going to tell them what you're going to talk about and send them an agenda the same way you would. But that's one of my favorite kind of call to actions, because you're opening up about something kind of big. It's kind of, vague in a sense, create some curiosity. And then by the time you get to your real ask that you want them to say yes to, it's way better than a 3-hour webinar. So that's one of my favorite call to actions that I've been using that I wanted to share with you guys.
Awesome, Carol.
All right.
Any last tips?
Yeah, just, I'm going to recap what I've already said, right?
Yep.
Block the time, be intentional, make the calls, just do it. Give yourself freaking permission to fail, to screw up, and don't punish yourself for it. Know your ICP and why they should care about you. Know your value prop, know your pitch, all right? Test, test, test. In 6 months, you're going to be a freaking rock star. This week, you're going to suck. It's a process. It's okay. Just do it.
Yeah. I think to piggyback off that, this will be the last thing I say. If you can spend the time to develop the ability to pick up the phone and be skilled I'm telling you from personal experience, it will change the trajectory of your career. You're going to stand out as somebody who can be brought in. You're almost like a specialist, and it will only continue to be like that as we go forward, as technology continues to play a bigger and bigger part. If you're getting good at the phones now and you're putting in that time, it's going to set you up very well to be a very valuable sales professional in the future. Absolutely.
That's what I was going to
Worth
say. It just leads to better conversation. So the further you move down the sales cycle, the better you are at cold calling, the better you are going to be at conversations, the better you're going to be at keeping people's attention. And that is going to pay dividends all the way through. So my last point on everybody is just have fun with this. Stop taking it so fucking seriously. You know what I mean? Like, what's the worst thing that could happen to you? Somebody hang up on you? Oh no. You know what I mean? Just have some fun, but do the prep, right? Do the prep so that you're not like making one phone call, then doing a bunch of research and then finding a phone number and then making another call. That's an absolute disastrous way. Spend the 3 hours to, 2 hours, 1 hour, whatever it is, to do all your prep, get all your stuff, and then hammer the phones and have some fun with it and let's just, and just keep evolving here. So thank you all very much. Again, thanks to the sponsors for helping us put this on. Really appreciate everybody joining us. We will get back to you. Yes, the recording will go out to everybody. So for all of you who are asking, yes, the recording will go back. And we're going to do some Q&A on this afterwards. So it's just going to be straight up answering these questions, but feel free to reach out to any of us, James, Daryl, or myself. If you have any direct questions, connect with us all on LinkedIn, go find out about all our companies, and we're happy to help. Any last comments, guys, before we get out of here?
Follow me on LinkedIn and then social sell me. Show me your stuff.
There you go.
Yeah, same here, guys. This was a blast. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, everybody, make it a great day. And like I say at the end of all my podcasts, go make somebody smile today. If you had a crappy day, no matter how bad your day went, if you go make somebody smile, you know you had a great day. Thank you all very much. Make it happen.